Tensions are mounting between a federal judge and the Trump administration. The judge is concerned that ICE officials violated an order to not deport immigrants to El Salvador. The administration argues the order came too late. And now the Attorney General of the United States has declared the judge has no right to be meddling in foreign affairs. At the center of all of this is a gang and a 19th century law. There is a lot to unpack here, but Lisa, what do you see as the most important issue at issue?
Well, that's a tough question because there are so many issues at issue. I mean, one issue is the salience of the Alien Enemies Act from the 18th century. It's not been frequently litigated because it hasn't been frequently invoked. You know, the question is whether this alleged presence of this Venezuelan gang in the United States constitutes perpetrating, attempting, or threatening an invasion. And that would seem to be not the case. But because the issue's been so infrequently litigated, it's another novel legal issue. This is an example of the Trump administration pushing the envelope, rooting around in the basement for legal bases that they can use. And so, you know, it needs to be litigated. And one thing notable about it is that the last time the Supreme Court considered the issue was in 1948, and at that point it declared that some aspects of the matter were not subject to judicial review because of the extraordinary deference that has been traditionally given to the president in matters of national security and foreign relations. And so that's probably the best argument that the administration has. And you've seen them, you know, throw references around to national security and maybe even state secrets and things like that. So that's an issue. Another issue is the uproar over the so-called single judge issuing a nationwide injunction. And there's a lot to say there. Nationwide injunctions are problematic, or they're increasingly common, but that's partly Congress's fault because as Congress has refused to act, the executive has, over the last 3 or 4 administrations, increasingly relied on sweeping executive orders. Mm-hmm. And so that has provoked this kinds of, you know, litigation, strategic litigation. And then a third issue is the defiance that we're talking a lot about in terms of whether the administration is defying this judge's orders, other judges' orders, and what will come of that. And I think, you know, this judge, for example, has yet to declare that. He continues to hold hearings. He's doing what is typically done in these situations, which is to continue to sort of not negotiate with the parties, but to hear from them. Yeah. Sometimes they modify their orders, and that's what's going on here. And so I think we can talk more about that once a judge declares that the administration is defying them. But
right. He seems to be losing his patience because he keeps asking and says they're giving, you know, wants very specific information about, you know, when they left our airspace and all. I think that last issue for me is about whether or not they have defied the court order is important from a broader perspective. And I was at least heartened, if I want to use those terms, to hear Trump say that they did not defy. And then when Laura Ingraham asked him, would they in the future defy court orders, he said no. And this is a little different than what he was saying just a few months ago, that, to paraphrase something like, if I'm defending the country, then I can't be breaking a law.
Right.
Here he was at least saying, okay, there is a separation between, you know, judicial and the executive, which I hadn't heard before. Whether he's going to stick to that.
You know, yeah, it's something. But if I could just follow up, because you're the attorney and law professor in the group, if I could follow up, because what Rick is sort of hinting at is that the argument that's going to come from the Trump administration that's being tested out there now is that this does in fact fall squarely within the executive branch's power over national security. And so do you see this as the sort of non-justiciable issue that could in fact allow the Trump administration to deport people from the United States based on a claim of it being either an invasion or certain folks being foreign terrorists? Is this opening up the door for that?
I mean, we have to wait and see what the Supreme Court says, and it's going to take a while for the case to get up there. I mean, the case is already sitting in some manner of appeal at the D.C. Circuit, the Intermediate Circuit Court. I mean, it's a fair legal argument to make because everything's a fair legal argument to make unless it's completely frivolous until it has been shut down. Mm-hmm. So possibly.
Lisa.
Yeah, so my concern is the framing here around basically saying that immigrants are terrorists, right? So even though it'll have to play out legally through the judiciary and in this tussle between the two branches, in the meantime, the court of public opinion is being shaped. And we know following 9/11, right, that the public rallies around the president when there are these messages being produced by the executive branch that says that the nation is under threat. Yeah. And so what concerns me about this move is that it allows or enables Trump and his administration to make these extraordinary grabs on power around and sort of targeting a set of people who are already very vulnerable in the United States, and not just illegal immigrants, but now legal immigrants.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just to sum that up quickly from a more political science perspective, right? I think the administration is bringing a trend in American politics of kind of relegating ever more power to the executive branch that had happened over quite some time and taking it to the logical extreme. Kind of saying that, no, we are not co-equal branch anymore. We are above, maybe in certain cases. We don't have to obey court orders. Maybe we'll see what that happens. But, you know, to my European colleagues, this is not really they have seen this before in their backyard. If you look at the Polish and the Hungarian model, the main thing was creating a court of public opinion against the judges, against the academia and the media, and then systematically go after that so that you make the opposition completely irrelevant. And that might be a more political trend, but, you know, Congress had relegated so much power to the, you know, I still remember the AUMF, where the president can still like go out, wage wars all across the world, right? So
yeah.
This is the logical extreme where the Trump is taking that too.
Is taking that too. And absolutely, we have seen contests between the president and Congress over the years, but this sort of interbranch conflict between the judiciary and the president in such a very terse way is unusual.